Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all here in this session at TNV Academy. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our eminent speaker, Mr. Faisal Hamid, today, who is going to talk to us about risk assessment as per ISO 45001. This is a topic in which we should all be deeply interested, as risk assessment is the key impulsion for effective implementation of any ISO standard in any organization. So it is very important to know how to conduct risk assessment as per ISO 45001 standard. In this webinar today, Mr. Faisal Hamid will discuss this topic in detail along with some real life examples he has experienced in the industry. Our distinguished speaker, Mr. Faisal Hamid, has done his post-graduation in Operations Management and Industrial Safety from MIT University, Pune, India. He is also a lead auditor in 9001, 14001 and 45001 ISO standards. He has an industrial experience of around 15 plus years in field of health and safety environment management system and has worked for organizations such as Jubilant Oil and Gas, Coca-Cola, Britannia, etc. He has been imparting training to a number of organizations, entrepreneurs, and executives on various topics related to ISO standards and their certification and implementation. It was just a brief introduction of our guest speaker today. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Faisal Hamid. I may request Mr. Faisal Hamid now to please start the session on risk assessment as per ISO 45001.
Hi, good morning everyone, and we welcomes you in TNV Academy for a very learningful session of ISO 45001 with respect to risk assessment. So before I go into the content, how we do the risk assessment and what is the benefit of it, I'll just give you a brief about myself. My name is Faisal Hamid. I am basically from India and have been graduated in information technology in Sikkim Manipal University. Then I have did my post-graduation in industrial safety as well as in operations management from MIT Pune. I am certified with some international certification like NIBOSH, IGC and IOSH. Also, I am a certified lead auditor for ISO standards of 45001, 9001 and 14001. Since the started of my career in way back 2007 in India with Jubilant Oil and Gas Private Limited. It's an exploration of oil well company which has multiple locations across India like in Gujarat and Kaveri and Assam. So I have been there for 5 years almost. Then I worked also with the FMCG companies like Coca-Cola and Britannia Industries and implemented the entire HSE management system with respect to all the standards of ISO 45000, 9001 and 14001. Right now I am based out in Oman and leading here a company called Jotun Paints, and I am responsible for doing all these implementation of the ISO standard as well as the corporate requirements. So now I am taking you through about the agenda of this, why we need to do the risk assessment and under which section that is needed under 45001, responsible to participate in risk assessment, then what is the purpose of risk assessment, how to do the evaluation and consequence likelihood in the risk assessment, how to evaluate the risk and design the control measures. So during this session, these all points we will cover, and end of the sessions we will put a 10-minute session for the people. If you have any query and questions, we will answer one by one. Okay, so first, the most important part, purpose of the risk definitions and what is the risk assessment. As this ISO 45001 is an auditable standard. So any standard which has like 1 at the end, like 45001, 9001 or 14001 or any standard which ends with 1 is called as a auditable standard. So we need to have some backup, some documentation, and against that you will get a certificate if you complete of that particular standard. So risk assessment is basically a base, or you can say it's a foundation stone of your any system, any standard. If you follow the risk assessment document itself, your foundation document, if your risk assessment is very much accurate, aligned with your business, aligned with your activities, aligned with your processes, then you can cover majority of the requirement or the standards clauses within risk assessment itself, and then driving it through clauses, it will be very easy for any implementation team. So the hazard identification, risk management are way to reduce likelihood or negativity incidents which is occurring at your site. The process includes the identification, evaluation, implementation of relevant safety measures. Risk is the possibility of loss or injury, and it is evaluated based on the consequences and likelihood. So what is the principle that we need to follow when we are conducting a risk assessment? First of all, identifying the hazards. We need to evaluate at the workplace what kind of hazard is available at your workplace. Then you identify a team. It's very much important that who people, where is working, at what location, how much harm they will get if these hazards will be available. Evaluate the risk and decide on precautions. So these two parts, hazards and deciding what kind of people, what kind of asset, what kind of environment will affect, on the basis of that you will decide the precautions. Then record your findings and implement them. Very important part, any of the findings or any of the activity, if you are not documenting it, it will not be auditable. So whatever we are doing, any activity related to risk assessment or recording of near misses, unsafe act, unsafe condition, we have to keep a record of that. So documented information is very much required in terms of keeping the records, because this will cover your hazard identification, risk assessment and opportunities clause section 6.1.2, right? So your documentation also will be available, as well as your activities also completed. Review your assessment and update when necessary. It's very much needed whenever we are meeting any accidents or you have upgraded your legal requirements. Your corporate requirements also update sometime. Looking into those activities, we need to re-review the documentation. You have to go back, check your risk assessment if it is complying or not. If it is complying, then it's fine. If you are not complying it, you need to review it over a period of time. Risk assessment is a live document. It's a very long process, but keeping this all document live is a very much important. Okay, so what kind of risk that we need to cover in 45,001? If I will talk only about 45,001, this talks about the occupational safety and health. Before of 45,001 in 2018, there were a standard called OSHA's 18,001, which superseded by 45,001, and then companies got, or the certification got a period, grace period of 3 years to implement 45,001. So under which you can cover all the aspects related to legal requirements, workplace risk, fire risk, environment risk, chemical risk, machinery risk, electrical risk, and business interruption analysis, or you can say crisis if you have something which is environmental effect and political influencing situations. So that also you can cover under business interruption analysis and quality risk assessment. So these kinds of input we are actually covering under the risk assessment. This is overall what kind of inputs that we take under the risk assessment. So you can cover under 6.1.2, the ISO standard of 45,001, hazard identification, assessment of risk and opportunities. Okay, so what is the concept that actually we need to follow to comply with the ISO standards? First of all, we need to have a common way to understand the risk, common criteria to evaluate the risk. We need to clarify and visualize the risk. Based on the clarifications, we need to prioritize the actions. We also need to compare risk from site to site. Okay. So now what is happening in a practical example, if I will give you in the industry, what is happening? We have a corporate working, some big corporate is working under like 16 or 15 manufacturing units across India. And I have been assigned to conduct a risk assessment for my unit, which is based out in southern part of India. Then one unit is in western part of India, one is east part of India, one is north part of India. Now, if I leave everybody independently to do the risk assessment, we have a different kind of inputs, right? So when we are leading an organization to make it very uniform, the data, we develop a template, or the company right now started using some web platform to do the risk assessment. So keep in mind that all your inputs have a common platform or the common template to understand the risk. Then evaluation criteria has to be common. If a fire in a production area evaluated one unit as a high risk, then it cannot be go below high risk in other unit. They cannot say it's a medium risk for me and other unit can say it's a low risk to me, because the business is the same way we are doing it, the activity is same, the process is same, so risk category will be same. Okay, then we need to common criteria to evaluate, classify, visualize the risk. Okay, it's very important to having a visualize concept. I will cover you in the next slide. As you can see, high risk is a red zone, medium risk we covered as a yellow zone, and low risk or insignificant risk is called as a green category. So based on classification, if you have a high risk, your management will decide whether you can continue your activity or the processes with the high risk, or you need to lower down the risk category or the criteria. If other sites across the sites are agreed to go with that particular risk category and to implement those things without having any changes to continue the business, they can do, but their risk will be still available. So always prioritize your risk with the consultation of your internal team, and then implement the changes. The consequences you have to define, describe to the management that if with the same high risk category, if we are gonna continue the business, the impact will be any high severity level, which you covered under 6.1.2.2 of the ISO standard requirements. Risk matrix, a very vital part of any risk assessment template, how you are going to categorize your risk. I'll share you more in detail when we have a next slide. So basically, some companies covered 5 by 5 matrix, which is shows likelihood and consequences, under which you can define the category of risk. And the risk matrix is defined and established to support the process of risk assessment and shall be basis of all HSQ risk evaluations. So if we have a likelihood is less, consequences is high, then vice versa, if your consequences is less, likelihood is high, then accordingly it will multiply your numbers. So some companies keep in numbers, some company keeps in color coding, some companies need to keep it as a like numeric and alpha category. So accordingly your risk, final risk rating will be increased and decreased. Consequences cover personal injury, illness, environmental, fire and property, security breaches, quality and reputation of the company. Nowadays we have a lot of inputs from many organizations that reputation related to quality and media intervention is a lot. Like if we are working very big brands and good corporate companies, they are very much scared about to get into the attention of media, any quality issue, any service issues or anything. That also can be a part of your risk assessment. Likelihood shall be evaluated based on the safety measures. If they are in place, now if we are going to build a new factory as a greenfield plant, majority of the manufacturing units nowadays is coming with a greenfield plants. So their majority of the risk assessment they implement before finalizing going to the production or into the process. Before of that they implement everything. So during the risk matrix or risk evaluation, we need to cover whether in place of control measures are exist. After existing this control measure, still additional control measure if you required. If not required, it is comfortably in your green area, then it's perfectly fine. And then it's a maintenance, how they are maintaining it. We made the facilities, but nobody is maintaining it. So that's also you need to consider when doing the risk assessment. If they are trusted to given the expected protection, sometimes organizations do changes. Like in the recent process, many organizations have started establishing the HSC management system, which where they were running the factories for last 50 years, 20 years, 30 years, but these systems are very new to them. So rigidness is that they have a very old operators, very new operators, and the old operators they have orthodox way of doing things, and they are very much comfortable in doing in the old way. So what will happen if you go and try to change their behavior or you introduce new machinery or new process, they will not adopt immediately. There is a resistance of acceptance on anything. So change is not easy, but still since it is for their benefit, it is safety for people, environment and the property, we need to convince them. So taking them in confidence, comfort them for the changes, it's very much mandatory and beneficial for both organization as well as the people. If you are doing of these activities, you cover 6.1.2.3 of risk assessment in ISO 45001. Now, what is probability and likelihood? As I can understand, if basic starts of the documentation process or the risk assessment, these are the foundation document of your entire HSC management system. So based on that probability and likelihood, you are able to see the frequency of the incidents, how it is occurring in your organizations. Suppose your incident is happening very frequent and there are no control on it. So obviously your probability is very high, likelihood is very high, right? Then you have a bit controls, but still incident are taking in place, so still it is not safe. Control measure are in place, people are not following it up. This also will keep your probability and likelihood on the higher side. You have a control and people are following it, you do not have any incident, then your probability will also go down and likelihood is also go down. So by doing this, you are actually achieving a less reportable accidents, you are controlling your hazards well, your people are trained. So by doing this, you are majoritarily covering all the aspects of ISO standard. You just need to link your documents with the respective standard number. That's it, the clauses. So it will be very much clear if your likelihood and probability is aligned with your business. And always give a right data. What will happen sometime when I am going to do the risk assessment at site, I ask the operator, okay, when last time somebody got a finger injury on the filling machine or in the packaging area? That operator will tell it's very frequently happening. Now and then when we are touching any like packing material or the machine is not working perfectly, People are get injured. I get cut injury in my hand. I got finger cut, and then you ask how severe it is, how bad it is, and sometimes they say it's a very normal one. Sometimes they say we lost a finger of a person in every 2 years or 1 year. So obviously it's a high risk job. But since they are facing on a daily basis some kind of issues, for them it is very easy. It's normal to get a cut injury, to get a like problem with the machines and all. But if you see, the probability is very high. The incidents are occurring very frequently. So it's a foundation document of your risk assessment. When you are conducting a risk assessment, then this has to be an accurate data. Keep your data from the previous years. Collect the information from all the peoples across the workplace, from security to the housekeeping staff to the supervisor to the manager to the third parties, contractors, whatever information you have, it will always help you in getting more and more detail about the incidents, and then accordingly you can define your probability and likelihood. Okay, now see, so as I was saying, likelihood can be evaluated by history and experience to give a time period between every incident. Very frequently incidents are happening, not good. Very high severity incidents are happening, not good. So all these activities you can put into the higher sequence level. Now coming into the consequences. Consequences is the outcomes of the scenario. Very clear, consequences is the outcomes of the scenario and shall be defined with the severity according to the consequence table. This is just for an example, I am giving it to you. No consequences, I got a slip on the floor while walking, but I was safe. Still that I need to report it? Yes. Under the near miss category, you can report this. I have a minor danger, something happened to me. I got a very minor injury or first aid. Yes, there is a problem in the process. Danger, external medical treatment cases. I got injury at the workplace. Then I did not get the treatment at site, or the site is not having the facility to treat me, and I need to go to visit to the doctor or the hospital, consult to the hospital. It comes under the external medical treatment cases. Then comes critical consequence level 4, lost time injury. So very much need to understand first what is the lost time injury. As a definition, ISO standard or the OSHA's or the ILO, any person who are away from work more than 1 day due to the workplace incident is called as a lost time injury. So if a person or the guy who is get hurt, I need to go to visit and doctor advised me to take a break for 1 day because of this injury or this problem, I cannot continue my work. So that considered as a lost time injury. This always goes on a higher side. And then we have a catastrophes, which is like permanent inability or death. Suppose I got cut off some body parts, lost an eyesight, hearing, or I have a casualties at the workplace. This is nowhere is acceptable. Any standard that you can continue. If I am going to write one likelihood and consequences 5 category. So in 5 category, if I am going to define one activity, a person who is working at height rooftop and there is no control in falling that person from that rooftop, and still you want to do that activity, is not acceptable. Any standard, if you go and you are defining any activity which will lead to a death or permanent disability of a person or people, then that will be completely a non-conformity if no control measure is given and you are still doing that activity. So always, if I have identified one risk as a death threat to people or very high consequences, then I need to provide control measure before conducting the activity. So a person working on a rooftop, if they do not have a lifeline, they cannot arrest fall arresters, they cannot use those things. You have to just avoid that activity. In the risk assessment, you directly say and ask people, this activity is suspended till the control measure will not in place. So please make it very clear. Any consequences which you are not able to control, likelihood is there, then you just temporarily suspend that activity till you do not have a full control measures in that area. Any standard, if auditor will come conduct that audit and they find this activity you consider as a high risk activity and you do not have any control measure, you are doing this activity, it means you are not complying with the requirement. Okay, so this is just for you to understand about how do we cover the risk assessment. This is the template. Many organizations will have a different kind of templates. If you go across different companies, you may not find this kind of risk matrix, but there is a web portal there you can choose the likelihood and probability. Based on that, the final number of the risk matrix you can see, it's a high, low or medium range, right? Sometimes people put in four categories also, not only red, green or yellow. They put sometime tolerance, intolerance, in intermediate risk, high risk. So many categories they are defining. So it's all depend on their business to business, company to company, process to process, people to people, geography to geography. Okay, what kind of input that we need to have to conduct a risk assessment? What actually we need? It's a very basic and a foundation document of any management system, the risk assessment. So what kind of input that I need to conduct a risk assessment? So the companies decides in which way we need to organize this. Many organization in India and across the globe, which are like multinational companies or the single nations companies, also doing this on the basis of their incident management system. We as an organization report each and everything like near misses, first aid cases, external medical cases, losses, customer complaint, product complaints, right? ISO audits, when auditors comes to conduct an audit, that report also you can refer to conduct the risk assessment. Group HSCQ audit, like a company, a very big organization in many nations are having their own management system. They adopted it from 45,001, 9,001 and 18,000, 9,001, 45,001 and 14,001. They made their own standard, own requirement, set of requirement, which complying with all the ISO standard. So that also they refer when doing the risk assessment. Different of views. If you have a joint team, there is multiple views on that. Safety walk and Gemba walk. You have to go out the floor, walking around. You made some notes onto it, recording it into your system, which all will help you to get the input for conducting a risk assessment. It's very much required. If you are complying to all the standards requirement, there will be consultation, there will be training, there will be a product complaints. So every majority of the ISO 45001 clauses you can just map it in this risk assessment. If you have majority of the area covered, then easily you can map it and convince to auditor that if they will ask you, okay, you have not done a consultation, then you can say, okay, during the safety walk we have interviewed so operators, the process owners, and then we take an input from there. External parties you have not covered. You have customer survey report, you have product complaint report. These are the inputs which will help you to take more input. What kind of risk is there related to customer, then product, right? Incident management system is a very much important. There you are having information about lost time injury, you have information about external medical cases, you have information about first aid cases. So here it's a majority of your data is available, what you can take as an input. Okay, so very much required about the participation, the team who will conduct the risk assessment. This is a very, very vital part of any risk assessment, irrespective of your standard. In any standard, you go and refer the risk assessment document. None of the organization will say you it's done by so and so person. Only like one person or two persons have done the risk assessment. Risk assessment is a collective input from the entire organization, and this needs some expertise. Anyone who cannot just thought to conduct a risk assessment will go and start doing the risk assessment. As a leader of HSC, suppose I am an HSC guy and I need it's my duty to conduct a risk assessment, right? Risk assessment is a document which owned by HSC department. If I do not know the risk in my organization, how will I drive my entire HSCQ management system, right? So very much important that a leader who is going to conduct or making a team, he should know how to conduct a risk assessment or how to do the risk assessment. And when I am going to choose a people, it must be given a prior information. Let them have an interview before, train them properly, like what kind of risk assessment you are going to do at the workplace in their teams. So in every organizations there is a set of people like HSCQ department, production, logistics, maintenance, quality, or whosoever you feel that important part of this particular area wise risk assessment, you can make a team. In the organizations many time you have been experienced, people do the risk assessment inside a meeting room. They open a template, they list down the activity, they start mapping it. Please do not encourage any such activity if you are conducting a risk assessment. Make a note that risk assessment is a live document which always give you an input about your entire picture of your health, safety and environmental management system. So you better go to the workplace, stand there, observe the activity, list down the activity, map their activity with the likelihood and consequences, then evaluate your activity in the meeting room. But do not just write any activity in the meeting room, because when we are doing a risk assessment in a meeting room, we actually do not see actual activity what is happening around. So you are just covering a theoretical data which is not much practical impact on people or the property. So we might miss very major inputs when we are doing into the inside meeting room. Suppose many part of the world is very hot nowadays. If I consider the part of India, if I say from March till October, you have a huge weather effect. Like it's a diverse, sometimes very hot, sometimes raining, sometimes very humid, sometimes very cold. So that also affect your productivity, that also affect your processes. And when I am sitting inside the meeting room, I have an air condition. It's a very perfect environment to sit and conduct the risk assessment. So those things in mind will not be available. You do the activity, but you will not have the environmental effect in your risk assessment. So very much important, when I am conducting a risk assessment, we need to be available on the floor at the workplace practically. By doing this, you will also comply the requirement of 5.4 of ISO standard 45001, consultation and participation of a worker. Okay, so now coming into the factors. In the previous slide, you can say what kind of people who have all the part of the team now, which all are things that we need to be majority covered while doing the risk assessment. Definitely, fire is a big threat across the globe. Chemical, if we are into the chemical industry, environmental impact is very much mechanical, electrical, and the workplace assessment. Workplace risk assessment I am talking because here is a physically, sometimes the ergonomical, which is not covered under mechanical, electrical, or environment. So, other than this, if you have anything that workplace risk assessment companies are given a terms, or sometimes they just say general risk. So these things, when like you are doing material handling, so people are actually engaged into the job, they are moving something, but actually not they are getting any machinery hit or anything, but they have a back pain issue, they have some other kind of health issues. So that also comes under the risk assessment of workplace or general risk. The heading of its the top one is the business interruption analysis. This is a new concept which is actually coming very frequent now, and companies are very much considering this. uh, Sometimes an organization will go in such kind of a risk which they have not foreseen, and they have to just close their entire process. So in that case, we need to cover. So the business interruption analysis is basically it's a like which is not influenced by your own organization, like geographical issues, political issues, like this pandemic. It's a very live example. We have been 2 years like this with the corona pandemic, which is not having organizational any issue into that. It's a global impact on that, and my company was shut down for almost 3 months, 4 months. How they will survive? So all those risks has to be taken care, because you have a live customer to support, you have a supplies to do that. In these cases, now companies are started taking, if my businesses get interrupted from external factors, how we need to control it. So these all factors are you can consider when you are conducting a risk assessment. By doing this, you can cover 6.1.2.2 of the ISO 45001 standards. Okay, so I am just giving you an example about risk assessment form, or if you are working in some organizations, you could have a SAP database, or some companies have their own portal on conducting the risk assessment, because they have multiple units, and the corporate wanted to see the across the factory in India, how much is my high risk across the India. So they have centralized every data, all the data. Okay, so sorry, this form is for your understanding how do we conduct on the floor the risk assessment. As you can see, description of task or activity, what kind of activity is happening, what kind of hazards is there in this particular activity, what is the existing control measure. As I said, right now I am making a new factory where it's like greenfield plant, right? And all these parameters we started placing before going into the production phase or starting into the work at the workplace. But when we are evaluating the risk, we get to know that after having existing control measure, still I have a risk level on a moderate side. So I need to control it, bring it to green, or put some additional control measures to make it to the green. So this is how you need to conduct the risk assessment. If I am going to write one activity or one task, receiving packing material. Now receiving packing material will have a different kind of hazards, accident due to no forklift driving visibility, waste due to damaging of pallet, it's an environmental impact, right? Incorrect packing material order received, this is a quality issue. Like damage of packaging internally, this is also a quality issue, right? Storage of cans in the drive rack system. It is just an example for you. There is a racking system in the industry where they are placing pallets and materials which is automatically moving here and there. So all this, what kind of risk it can be given to people, what kind of hazard is associated, what kind of a control measure is available, and what is the current risk. If this risk is going to red, then it means this activity you have to eliminate or to put on hold. If I am going to continue with this category is a red and do not put any control measure, any auditor will come and put you big question mark on that, and they will just say your audit will not pass, or we will not provide you an ISO certification, because you identify yourself the activity is a higher side, it's a loss of person or it's a lost time injury, and still you are doing this activity. So how can you do this? So we are not allowed as an organization, as a team, that any activity which is having a life threat of people with the very big consequences on the environment or impact, then it will not be allowed to continue the operations. We have to either hold the operations or put an additional control measures to bring it down. So what are the safety hazards you can find if I go to any very big warehousing system in this particular area? I am going to do the risk assessment in this particular area. What kind of risk I will feel? It's very much visible. These racks can collapse. Pallets will fall down onto the people, right? This kind of incidents took places in the warehousing system. If you see kind of hazards, finished goods fall down on people during lifting and picking. Rack will also collapse sometime. If a person hits bottom of the rack, then the entire racking system will collapse, and it's a domino effect in a racking system. It's very dangerous. Collision between forklift and reach trucks, because it's people driving a bit faster way. They are not very much trained. There are areas where blind spots are there in the warehousing system. Nowadays, if you see very fast servicing adaptation in the organizations are happening, like Amazon, Flipkart and all, they have so much of warehousing system and they try to deliver you as much as fast. So just imagine how much fast they have the processes in the back end. Slip, trip and fall hazards is existing there. Occupational exposure, yes, if you go to the very chemical warehouses, there is a dust, fumes, biological hazards, noise, temperatures. Then rotating and moving equipments are available in the warehousing systems. Fire risk, ignitions nowadays. If you have some AC storages, food FMCG companies, if you go, all their warehouses are having AC facilities. The temperature are roaring a lot. Fire risk are very much visible. If you have been experiencing in India, many of the fire incidents in the recent past is published in the media that warehousing system is got fired. So these kind of hazards are actually available, and you can note down when you are doing the risk assessment. So in one particular area, I am going in just warehousing system to see this kind of hazards are actually there. So you have to map it, how you have to map it, how to conduct a risk assessment, that we can take a separate session onto it with the live examples. And this is just a brief about when you are going to do the risk assessment. Now I get an input of what kind of hazards we have and who are the people who will get affected onto it. Next is that mitigation plan. Mitigation plan is nothing but an implementation of the control measures. Each risk and usually be mitigated by several type of mitigation measures. Excuse me. Likelihood to be reduced or consequences also reduced. Some companies, they do not reduce the consequences, they just reduce the likelihood. Some companies, they reduce the consequences, they do not reduce the likelihood. So its understanding depend on the organization and their standard what they are following it up. But majority of the companies, they reduce likelihood also, the consequences also, right? uh, some companies, if you have a very big silos or the boiler system, uh, a blast of boiler happened in many organizations. I have experience in my previous assignments that some units got boilers, steam boilers are got blast. They put a control measure as a control measure as a automated system. They link with the system where the temperature or the pressure will goes high, it will send the SMS to the operator, to the HSEQ manager and all. But still the risk is there. Still is the risk, but just your likelihood is reduced. But the consequences of blasting a boiler still there. So this way you have to mitigate your risk, and every organization will have their own way of doing things. It's all depend what kind of business you are, how to choose which mitigation measures to implement or implement them all. Okay, so very much important here. How do you decide the robustness of mitigations measure? As I said, as a operator, I am working in one machine for last 10 years, and I do not have any kind of incidents in the past 10 years. Suddenly, one day I was assessing my risk, and I observed that my finger will get trapped in this area because no guard is in place, and operator need to touch that area very frequent to pull out some materials or to oiling or greasing of that area. So what is happening, if I am going to put a guard there with an interlocking system, if that guard will remove, the machine will close automatically, right? So what will happen, I am as an operator working for last 10 years, and now suddenly you put a guard on the machine, and I need to remove that guard, put the oiling and greasing. By the time this machine will stop, again I have to refix the guard, and then machine will start. So what will happen, the productivity will go down, this operator will get irritated, he will not accept your control measure because his activity is increased. He need to open the guard, then he need to do the greasing, then he need to close it, then he need to restart the machine. So that control measure, actually he will feel like this is not a benefit for me, I'll not take it, right? So whenever we are making a mitigation plan, always keep in mind that we need to give a comfort to the people. That should not include additional activity to their work. Always risk assessment is having outcomes to reduce the impact of incidents or accidents, likelihood, consequences. So I am as a operator, if not comfortable in adopting those changes, I will not take this. What I will do, I will just bypass those guards. I will start doing the work the way I was doing it before. So always make your mitigation plan effective. If it is not supporting to them, they will not take it. So always consult with the operations people, talk to them what are the control measures, what kind of control measures they want. Also now technologies are improving, machines are improving, machines designed safe, we people actually make a mistakes. So in those way you can go and convince people, design your machines or make changes, kaizens, do the kaizens, bring them on the training sessions, take their inputs what you can do the best way to reduce these kind of risk, and they will be very much convinced, they will be very happy to give you the inputs. And if you implement those mitigation and changes as per their input, they will take it more positive way than it is coming from the outside. So very much important. By doing this activity, you can cover the ISO 45000 standard of clause 8 operations and eliminating hazard and reduce the occupational health and safety risk. Now, if I go to fall down on people during lifting, picking, FG possible mitigation plan, I have one activity that a person need to pick some material in finished goods warehouse. What kind of likelihood and consequences that can be happen? So these kind of control measures we provide in FG or the finished goods warehouses. Materials are, if you can refer my previous slides photograph, the materials are completely wrapped and secured, so that will not fall on a people. Personal avoiding area during lifting and picking. If you go in any operational warehouse where activities are in progress, they will not allow you to go directly. If you have a very good HSC management system, they will stop you at the gate. They will ask you to wear a helmet, wear a safety shoes, wear a reflective jacket. Then only you are allowed to go only into the walkways where they have defined to people walk. Other areas where forklift or BOPTs or the machines are moving on, they will not allow you to go in operation side. Integrity of pallets, the storage system, what kind of storage system you are doing, your racks, your pallets, everything is perfect, it's not damaged, that will not affect any the stability of the weights. Training of forklift drivers and operators, very much important. If a person is not trained how to work on a forklift, they will do a mistakes, he might or they might got accidents. Correct approved forklift. Okay, in my previous assignments I have been experienced the forklift, it comes with the load. It is not like any forklift can lift any kind of weight. It's a lifting device actually. So like 3 tons, 5 tons, 10 tons, it's all come with the capacity. 1.5 tons of forklift a driver was running, and he was carrying almost 2 tons of load. Then I asked, what is the limit of your forklift? And he said it's a 1.5 tons. And his rear wheel in the center wheel is almost up because of the load. So this kind of information that if so what is the failure here? It's a mistake of the driver or it's a mistake of an organization. So the problem is the organization is not actually bring the load in 1 ton or 1.5 tons. They got 2 tons of load, and operator is not having any choice because he is having a machine only limited to 1.5 tons, and the load single load is 2 tons, and he need to do the work. So it's a organizational failure, not the operator's failure. But at the same time, he should report there are certain issues. My loads are coming in 2 tons and my machine is only 1.5 tons. So these kind of things you will experience in your practical life when you are doing the risk assessment. Consider all these inputs. Okay, back protection of single racks, preventing people going behind single racks, walkway, down protection, fall down protection, safety lock on beams, very much important in the warehousing system. There is a locking mechanism of all the racks. If it has been removed, you have to note it down when doing the risk assessment. Organization will have this 15 centimeter of space between goods and beams, because forklift need to be lift it up and then pull it out. So these kind of control measures that companies are keeping when doing making the infrastructure, reducing the consequences. So people without hard hat is not allowed, helmet is not allowed, protective roofing or forklift, first aid competence people, equipment. These all are the consequences to reduce the impact on the people. By doing this, you can cover the 8.1.2 eliminating hazard and reducing risk. Okay guys, so these are the basically an overview of the risk assessment with reference to the 45001. It's a very deep subject. It's a very big subject actually, the risk assessment. And if I only consider a risk assessment, I would say as an auditor for the last 15 years, I am doing it. If you have a very robust and very nice risk assessment document, I am sure there is no organization who cannot complete the 45,001 certification, because this is the foundation document of your entire management system. Everything you need to be get input from this document. If you want to train your people, the training input you will get from this. You need an engineering control, you need a administrative control, you need to put a mitigation plan, you need to have a business plan, you need to have a people's competency, if you need to have a infrastructure related issues, all inputs you can get it from your risk assessment. This is a very nice document. It is just need you have to spend a little longer time, because this is what is the base of your entire management system. If your base is strong, then entire management system is an extremely beautiful. So I hope I have given you a brief about how you can take up this, and anytime you can write back to us for any inputs. So now we can take questions if you have anything.
Faisal sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
Sir, is there a specific set of people in an organization who are required to document this risk assessment process?
Specific, not people, but this has to be made as a team. Like it's mandatory. If I am a production manager and we are conducting a risk assessment, so the who will be the part of risk assessment? HSC person must be there, your operations manager must be there, your production manager must be there, your supervisor, production supervisors, or the shop floor employees. So these 5-6 people will be part of it. Now if I eliminate production manager, right, and we are doing risk assessment in his area, production area, so what will be the impact if I document that information and he is not at all aware what kind of risk in my area? So it will be invalid actually. So it's not necessary you have to be a set of people in, like 5 people to do the entire company risk assessment. It's a process owner, HSC person, maintenance, quality, and the operations. That has to be a part of it. In across the company, if you are, I am taking like the organizational overview, I am doing the risk assessment. So I, as a HSC person, will be a part of all functions: logistics, warehousing, raw material, production, quality, maintenance, marketing, sales, business interruption. I will be a part of it because I am the process owner of risk assessment. But sales people will not be a part of production or backend. Backend people will not be a part of the you can say maintenance. So you have to set a number of people with the process owners. 2 or 3 people will be common, like maintenance, HSC, or the operations managers.
Thank you so much, sir. Do any of the other participants has any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. What is acceptable risk?
Okay. Okay, so if I have a complete set of risk assessment, right? I am a general manager of the company, and I have fit to my organization that I will not take any high risk, and the acceptable risk. Acceptable risk means, as I show into this category, I'll just refer my slide. Okay, so risk matrix you can see here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in the yellow category, green category, and red category, now I have a risk which is 5E. Now it's a red, right? And my general manager says, okay, so we have 5 numbers of high risk scenario in the company. I will not take 5, but I will take 2, because that's need an investment of $100 billion, right? Because organization has to run the business, right? So what he say, okay, you reduce, I will invest like $500,000 now, to reduce three numbers into yellow category. Okay, and these two high risk, I need to take an approval from my like promoters, shareholders, and everybody. Then only I can invest in this amount to minimize the risk, right? So by the time he is agreed, till the time he will not have the investment plan, the budget plan, he agreeing to carry out the business with that same risk. So for him it is acceptable risk is 5E, right? The higher category 2, but rest 3 he reduced it. So it's all about organization to organization, what is acceptable risks for them to run the business. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? I guess there are no more questions from any of the participants. So we can now come to the conclusion of this particular webinar. First of all, I would like to extend my thanks to Faisal Hamid sir for giving his valuable time and effort which he has invested in producing this wonderful webinar today. The session was very explanatory, it was very informative as well. The topic was very broad, and the way you have presented your expertise and wisdom in sharing your thoughts about this particular topic was absolutely great. We thank you from the bottom of our heart for producing this wonderful webinar. I thank all the participants as well for being an active part of this particular webinar. I hope to see you all again soon. Best of luck on behalf of TNV Academy for all your future endeavors, and it's goodbye from my side. Hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone. Thank you. All the best.
I request all the participants to now please leave the meeting.